Hello and welcome back to another episode of AI Frontiers, a show where we bring you conversations with the people currently working at the far edges of artificial intelligence. One of those people is today's guest, Sam Witteveen. Sam is the co-founder of Red Dragon AI, and he's got deep experience from years of working with artificial intelligence and machine learning. I really appreciated Sam's perspective on AI agents, and I think you will too. So, let's get straight into it. Here's my conversation with Sam Witteveen. Yeah, well, Sam, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me today. I'll start the interview the way I've started all of them so far. I'll ask you to tell me your name and what you're currently working on.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Witteveen. I'm currently working on a lot of things to do with LLM applications and agentic applications. It's something that I've been working on for quite a while. So I got involved in deep learning around 10 years ago. I'm currently the co-founder at a startup called Red Dragon AI. So we started in 2017. We do a lot of things around research. We've had papers at most of the major conferences. We do prototyping for people. We do consulting. We had our first paper on LLMs in 2018 and have been quite actively working on LLMs for the last 6 years or so.
Nice. So you've just sort of answered my next question, but maybe
Okay.
you could go into a little bit more detail about how you got into AI in the first place. What brought you to the field?
Okay, so purely by accident, I had a startup that was a mobile app startup, and I was trying to basically hack the Apple App Store. And in the process of doing that, I worked out a number of things that if you could work out these things, then you could rank quite well for certain things. So I basically sort of then through that got involved in machine learning, got really interested in machine learning around sort of 2012, 2013. And then as I through that, I was also really interested in NLP, natural language processing, and that sort of, that kind of opened up even more, once I heard about deep learning and saw some of the things that were going on with vision stuff in deep learning, and started getting interesting, like, okay, what was going to come for sort of text? And the text stuff came a lot later than the vision stuff, but sure enough, it came. It seems crazy to me now that like these models that we're working with can do so much when only sort of 5-6 years ago, the models that we were working with, were really limited and, could do certain things really well, but had things like a context size of sort of 50 when we were talking about LSTMs and stuff like that. And then that expanded with BERT and with the transformers to say 500. And now we're sort of on the verge of infinite context windows. So it's like, it's pretty amazing how things have changed.
Yeah, for sure. The pace has been really surprising, and it seems like it just happened like almost practically overnight. So now that we know a little bit more about how you came to the field in the beginning, it'd be great to maybe define our terms for the rest of the discussion. We're going to talk about AI agents, so it'd be great to know like what we mean by AI agents. So how do you currently define an AI agent?
Okay, so this is a really good question, I think. And the challenge, I would say that that a proper sort of agentic application at the moment, or verging on an autonomous agent, is where you have certain points in the logic that are not just conditional logic. They're basically being decided usually by some kind of external reasoning system, usually at the moment an LLM. And those points might be on a sort of track of sort of rails, like a train track, that only at certain points you make decisions, or with like some of the early ideas that people tried, which don't really work in production, is where the LLM can decide everything and anything. So I think we're sort of seeing that at the moment, the sort of balance of people are realizing that, okay, if we just have everything on the track where the LLM doesn't make any decisions, that's not an agent. That's just basically an application. A good example of that over the past sort of year or so would have just been simple sort of naive RAG systems, or retrieval augmented generation systems, where every time they do a vector store search, they take some sort of similarity metric, they return some data, they then rewrite it with the LLM. It's fixed each time in that way. We're now starting to see agentic, RAG systems, though, where it's not fixed, where the LLM will look at the question and decide, okay, do I need to rewrite the question? Do I need to which database should I look for in this? What the things like that. So for me, I'd say the fundamental thing is the decision points that are going in from these things. We're still a long way off having sort of fully autonomous agents that we can just get it to do anything and everything. The sad fact is that most agents that people are trying to pitch from startups and stuff like that don't work very well, and they don't really sort of fly in production. I just spent a month in San Francisco talking to a lot of startups, talking to a lot of companies, and it seems like most people's agents are sort of operating at sort of like 70% of the time they kind of work, and 30% of the time they just go either don't work at all or go off the rails kind of thing. So yeah, I would say the key thing is the decision points, and we could even start thinking about like how many decision points do we quantify. Like I would say you probably want more than one in there. And sometimes those decision points will just be simply getting the agent to reflect on itself or reflect on sort of tool use. Another thing I would say is that what's really important is the whole idea of taking action on something. Generally, that's not going to be action maybe in the real world, but action in the digital world of deciding to do a search or deciding to ping an API and going out and using these different things and bringing them back without the human actually, specifically telling it to do that.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And a lot of your answer hints at some of the ways that you might answer this next question. So I'll ask it anyway, and we'll see if we can elucidate a little bit more like clarity here by way of contrast. So could you give me an example of a program that you would consider an AI agent, and then contrast it with something similar, but that you don't consider an AI agent?
I would definitely say like the chat bots, right? So the sort of standard chatbot chatbot, which is like an LLM app that just purely pings the LLM and just goes human LLM, human LLM, human LLM with nothing else. I would say that's definitely not an agent, right? We're starting to see that less and less. So I think, this year Perplexity has gotten very popular and stuff like that, which is much more on the verge of sort of agentic stuff where you've got these decision points in between the human and the final answer. And so like I mentioned before, like, definitely agentic RAG is a really interesting kind of thing. The sort of whole thing of basically summarizing for a specific use case, where it's not just a fixed sort of a fixed train track kind of thing. There are points where things diverge in there or different decisions can be taken. And I think that's sort of the fundamental that we're getting at. And as much as people would like to sort of claim that, they've got these agents that are fully autonomous, that kind of thing, I'm yet to see any of them that are any good. Actually, a good example of a really nice kind of app that's in production that I've been playing with recently is from GitHub. So they've got a thing called GitHub Copilot Workspace. So it's still in beta. I think it's going to be made public soon. It basically operates on your GitHub repo. So you basically write you've got an issue in the repo. It will read the issue. It will read what changes you want it to do. And then it goes through a bunch of series of steps where it's kind of making decisions. The first one being where it kind of specs out what's the current state of the repo, what's the desired end state of the repo after it's done. Then it makes a plan of what it's actually going to change. And at each point, it sort of can come back to you and say, hey, is there something I'm missing here? Or, something like that. So it's still incorporating, it's not like totally autonomous where it's just, you don't know what's going on under the hood kind of thing. But then I'm pretty sure, like, after that, once you start making the changes, it's also got some sort of checking systems in there for making sure that, like, okay, this code is going to work the way it's proposing, and that the model's actually writing and stuff.
Yeah, that's an interesting blend of the human in the loop model where it's
Very
you
much,
have an
yeah.
agent returning to you. And yeah, that does seem like maybe it's something we might call like kind of a hybrid. It's like almost to full autonomy, but as you said, you don't know, it's not going off and doing things without you being able to see what's happening, but it does have a level of autonomy, I guess, about like making choices and how it will solve a problem. Interesting. Cool. So now I'd like to maybe talk a little bit about your more recent work. You have a long history with AI, machine learning, it sounds like. What brought you to AI agents specifically? What made you want to try them out or work with them in the first place?
Okay, so I was developing ideas for agents back in like 2016. Back then, mostly we would just call them sort of conversational agents. But the challenge with back then was that the LLM probably wasn't good enough just to have a full conversation. So you would often have different points in there before you would ping the LLM or after you would ping the LLM, and that kind of thing. Very early on, both my co-founder and myself really believed that you couldn't, or you shouldn't be trying to use an LLM for facts and figures. And so that kind of, very early on, we were sort of looking at ideas which later became named, sort of RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. But we were sort of looking at like, okay, how could you extract out information and then kind of like put it in an answer? And that really our belief was sort of like that LLMs were really good for grammar, for syntax, for that kind of thing, but don't trust them for facts. And that was some of the really sort of early back then. So to give you an idea, back in 2019, we had a paper called Paraphrasing with Large Language Models. And what was a large language model then was sort of like 1 billion parameters, right? That was like just considered absolutely huge, right? Now, like by today's standard, it probably wouldn't. It would be like a micro model, right, or a micro LLM. Even things on the new Apple phones are like 3 times bigger than that kind of thing. So yeah, like a lot of that is where we that are sort of interested. And then as the LLMs got better and better and better, it just opened up a lot of different ideas. Seeing sort of where Google's Lambda LLM came along, that was a clear sign that, okay, that these things were gonna work and be able to scale. Obviously, then ChatGPT coming out, really opened up everyone's eyes. I think for the researchers in the field, ChatGPT wasn't that surprising. It was more just like, okay, this has been a sort of continuation of a number of steps over the time. And then once that came out and once the models got good enough, then it started to be like, okay, well, what else can we inject in here? And could we get it to sort of do a router thing of where it makes a decision? And then you had things like the React paper last year, the PAL paper last year. Both of these papers, I think, were kind of really key, that sort of signaled that, like, okay, this stuff was going to work, right? The React paper's reasoning and action, where you would basically get the LLM to make decisions and decide what a tool should use, that kind of thing. And the PAL paper of where it could offload its sort of thinking reasoning for maybe something like math onto, just by writing a Python function and then just using that Python function back in the LLM. And that those sorts of things really made it clear that, like, okay, this agent stuff is eventually going to work. And I think leading up to today, we still have to do a lot of checking. We still have to do a lot of, careful planning of how we build these things. And that may get better, as the models get better. I know Sam Altman is like, telling everyone that, like, oh, don't, with GPT-5, you're gonna, we're just gonna roll all over these things because it will just do everything itself. I kind of feel like that's, even if the models get really better, whatever you're sort of building now is fundamentally going to work with a better model. It's not like what you're building now won't work with a better model. Like, it may be that you certain steps of what you're doing now you don't need when you've got a better model, but it still should sort of work. And I kind of feel like it's a really good opportunity, by people getting into it now, have got the opportunity to learn how to get these things to work, so that when the better models come, yes, okay, then you can just sort of, be more ambitious in what you're building, and that kind of thing. I think there, like the whole agentic thing, in many ways, we're just at the start of it. That we're sort of seeing a lot of frameworks out there. Most of the frameworks are kind of, up or down, like they work sometimes, they don't work other times. Really, it's all about sort of constraints at the moment, constraining what the LLM can do, what you actually let it do, what you give it access to, all those sorts of things. So, I kind of feel like this is where the building of, the agents is going.
Yeah, that's a great point about future improvements will maybe make some of the rails that we build now redundant, but it will still be very useful to know how these things work. And maybe you
Yeah.
do run into like an edge case or something where something that's you used to always have to do yourself is now reappearing And that doesn't happen very often anymore. But if you already have experience with that, you're going to know exactly what's happening and be able to fix it. When you first started working with agentic AI and AI agents, were there any moments that really stuck out to you where it just really clicked or you had a really amazing success?
Yeah, I think there've been lots of those right along the way. I can remember back sort of 5 years ago, there were certain models that, once we got it going and we created this character, we created this character that sort of existed in our company that we could talk to and stuff like that. And it would start getting, being able to pull in some information, really basic kind of stuff. Back then, that was like, that was definitely an aha moment that, okay, this is, there's opportunities to work here. Certainly over the last year, there have been many aha moments. So I now have, agents that run on my Mac where, at night they will go and basically do a lot of scraping. When I get it come in the morning, it will basically give me a sort of report of like, this is what's happened. Currently I'm based in Singapore. So my evening is sort of like San Francisco's morning, or, my overnight is San Francisco's morning. And that's when all the stuff gets announced, right? Or it's all on Twitter and stuff. So it's nice to be able to, come in and have it so that it's done a bunch of work finding stuff that like, okay, I want to know what's new, that kind of thing. I use agents a lot so I have a YouTube channel for, doing stuff around that YouTube channel, taking, the transcripts, rewriting stuff maybe for LinkedIn, or, repurposing some of that content in different ways. That's definitely, really useful. For me, it's like more now of like looking at like, okay, what are the biggest value things that you can do with an agent? Like, I think, there are lots of things you can do now. The challenge is like working out like, okay, if I'm going to make something as a product to sell or to do something there, I need to work out, okay, what's the biggest value? And then, how can I capture value on that? One of the challenges that I've seen over the past year, and sort of like the first 6 months last year, I just looked at every, AI startup, and almost all of them that were sort of rapperish kind of things, I could sit down and sort of in an afternoon, I could build their startup, right? And so I could have like, and just mostly because they were just relying on pinging the LLM and then doing something with that. There was no sort of tool use. There was no really sort of agentic sort of stuff. Definitely now things are getting, more challenging. Like, I have a whole sort of repo of custom tools that I've built and that my team have built, for using with specific agents. And that can be everything from sort of scraping tools to sort of email tools to, interacting with a variety of different APIs to get things done. And I kind of feel like that's, they're the aha moments when you see the tool suddenly work and you try it out and and suddenly you can get this thing to actually do something. And especially now with the sort of local models on your devices with things like Olama and stuff like that, you don't have to worry about, it's not a big deal now to leave an agent running all night and just trying out different things and sort of noting what worked, what didn't work, without having to run up a huge bill for token usage or something like that. So those have been the aha moments, I think, that starting to see that. There's a bunch of ones coming, I think, too. Like, I think we're just around the corner from a whole bunch of new things that are going to come, which are going to be really interesting. Definitely the sort of new models. We're seeing sort of three big trends: that token speed is going up massively, token cost is going down massively, and context windows are going to sort of infinite. And these three things really affect everything. And I see like, a lot of startups perhaps not taking into account these things, that, token speed, for example, going up means that the agents can now, they don't just have to ping the LLM once for a decision. They can ping it 5 times and take a vote, right? So they can sort of take a poll that like, oh, okay, are we going to do this or this? Okay, let's ask, 5 times, and three out of 5 we're saying this, or 4 out of 5 we're saying this. Okay, we go with that kind of thing. So that actually makes the agents much more reliable for doing things. With things like function calling now becoming more standard in LLMs, this also makes, allows for verification and checking systems, which again sort of just opens up a lot more doors for agents. I think one of the biggest aha moments too at the moment would be, it's pretty clear now that code tokens are the most valuable tokens sort of in the ecosystem, that if you can get agents to write code, that can actually be quite valuable in many ways. And I kind of feel like, okay, there's some really nice things going on around that are, becoming aha moments. So like I mentioned the GitHub one before, right? When I first saw that, I was kind of like, whoa, okay, that's pretty impressive. I met some of the people who were behind making it and talked to them about some of their decisions. And the decisions was really interesting. Like they were deliberately trying to move away from a chat interface. And I kind of feel this is where we're at now, is that real good agents, or, the sort of future of agents is not a co-pilot, right? Co-pilots were kind of like everything that's led us up to now. The agents now are much more where they will operate sort of by themselves without just like a chat interface and, bringing things back to a chat interface. So, I think that's sort of a key thing. I'm going on really long. I'm conscious of your timing.
Yeah, it's okay, because in your answer are sort of hints at some of the things that we'll return to later. So before we get to things like design and use cases, and you were mentioning a little bit about like what we might see in the future, we'll get to all of that. But I do want to ask about what you're working on now, and maybe what are the main focus areas or parts of your business or your client work where you're incorporating AI agents. You mentioned some personal stuff like these agents that are going out and delivering reports for you overnight. What about in your other areas?
So one of the things that I've been building for fun, but may actually become a product, is actually, and this goes back to the whole thing of coding tokens and stuff like that, is basically an agent that can write other agents. So at the moment, it can basically write like a full Crew AI stack just on you telling it what you want. And then it can go off and write all the code for that. And gradually it's we'll put in AutoGen, we'll add in probably, some form of LangGraph implementation into that. And that I think is a really interesting idea, because with the YouTube channel, I saw a lot of people asking me, that they like Crew AI because it's just so easy, or, it's reasonably easy, for people who are not programmers. And I see a lot of people doing the sort of no code, low code for agents. Unfortunately, most of them suck, if I'm really honest. Like they're just not reliable. They're not very good at being able to do that. I think one of the advantages with something like Crew AI is you can actually specify, these are the tools and that kind of thing. So if you've got a library of tools and you can basically tell something to write that, then that becomes really sort of possible to have it define stuff. And I kind of feel like in some ways that's a really interesting thing, because I feel that a lot of us in the field really don't know what the guy on the street wants an agent to do. And often it's something totally different than we would think of. So like, we've built like agentic systems to do email customer support, right? Okay, that seems like pretty obvious, right? I kind of feel like that's something that we worked on last year and more this year. I do find it really interesting when I, talk to people who are just not in the AI bubble, and it's sort of asking them, hey, what would you like to do? They come up with very different kind of ideas, and I kind of think like giving people like that a tool where they could kind of end up writing code without realizing that they're writing code actually is kind of interesting. And then being able to give them the ability to actually go in and sort of edit the prompts a bit and that kind of thing is a really cool thing. So that's still I kind of feel a lot of things I've made for myself personally, at some stage maybe they become products. I don't know. The challenge with a lot of these things is that if they're so customized, like the question is like how much do you make it customized to your particular use case versus like a generic kind of use case? And then if it's too generic, people can clone these things in a day, like I mentioned early on. So it becomes to the point from a business point of view, is like, okay, what's the moat here? Maybe the moat is really just, not selling the agent, but selling any outputs from the agent, that kind of thing. So where rather than, I do think like, this is a big thing that we're going to, is the whole, rather than sort of a co-pilot that you work with, it's a like done for you. So it's like, okay, I'm not paying for the agent, I'm just paying for the end result of getting all this stuff done, right? That kind of thing. And I think that's a fundamental difference than where a lot of people are thinking and a lot of startups are thinking. I think a lot of the startups, like, they're obsessed with the agent, where really the end guy on the street doesn't care about that. It's like, okay, it can do all that for me, and like I don't have to, like monitor it or something. Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of what you're saying is quite interesting and are things that I have both experienced and heard before, especially the idea of the agent kind of disappearing below the outcome and
Mhm.
focusing on like what we're going to get out of it. Because yeah, as for me, like as an AI hobbyist, like it's very easy for me to think of a million different things that I want it to do, but it's sometimes closing the gap between like getting people to understand what they can imagine is quite difficult. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that shakes out. You're also touching on a lot of like design issues. And so I'd like to ask, in your experience, when it comes to designing an AI agent, like what elements have you found significantly impact its effectiveness?
Okay, this is a challenging question. I think the thing is trying to get out of the way of the human. Uh,
Hmm.
so that if it becomes just like a purely chatbot kind of experience, some people love that. A lot of people don't, right? And I think that chatbots, having worked on sort of chatbots like 10 years ago, the challenge with chatbots is that they kind of sucked for a long time, and so
Hmm.
nobody trusted them, nobody liked them, everyone hated using them. And now that they've gotten quite good, there's still this reluctance, to go back to it. So, I think like this is where I think that things like the GitHub workspace thing is kind of interesting, is that where you get away from that chat interface, where it's more sort of like, okay, some way tell me what you want me to do. If you're the agent, tell me what you want me to do, and then I will go and work out how to do it, and then I will just come back and present you with some options of like, here's what I've done, or here, like, I've run into this problem, that kind of thing. But trying to still have human in the loop, but only have human in the loop when it's really necessary. Not sort of like, a chat interface where it's coming back. Oh, okay, so you want to do that? Okay, well, here's my output for this. Okay, now you tell me something else. Oh, okay, I give you some more output, that kind of thing. I think that will always have its place, for certain things like RAG and stuff like that. But I think, more and more, rather than just have like a natural language interface to a database or something, you will just go into work. It will look at everything that's happened since you were last engaging and give you a sort of update report with bullet points of like, okay, here are some things that are important to you for your work today. I kind of feel like that's the solution. I think like designing the UIs for that is definitely challenging, right? There's a whole new world there. We don't know, for example, so like in our startup, we've done a lot of things with voice UI. We worked on sort of TTS systems a long time ago, when they were really nascent, at getting to be kind of realistic. Uh, and we don't know really, like, is voice the best UI or not, right? Like there's many things that where voice, if you're on public transport or something, you don't really want to use voice, right? That's not the way to go. It is interesting sort of looking at, some of the recent announcements by Apple where they're using their earbuds to monitor when someone nods yes or shakes their head no, to communicate with some kind of, I guess, semi-agentic system that they're trying to put on a phone. That's kind of cool, right? Like, I think like those sorts of things, my guess is that we'll see a lot more things like that in the near future. I do think like, that actually sort of earbuds or sort of, earpods sort of things are actually something that is going to be used a lot more with agents. So where it will basically, be able to update us on things, but then we will just be able to either tap something or, engage with the agent if we want to with speech, but if we don't want to, just through another form. So I do like the idea of the sort of Apple sort of shaking the head thing. I really think though that the design, when we're talking about UI on a page or something like that, it's really early days, right? And everyone's trying out different sort of things to see, what works, what doesn't. We've experimented with some things around sort of having a chat interface on one side of the screen, but on the other screen, sort of having like dashboards to just sort of show different things, so that the agent is not having to just update through conversation. It can use the conversation, but it's also can show the end user like, okay, this is how much of this is done, or this is what's working, this is what's not working, that kind of thing. So there are some interesting startups that are doing things like that, which I think we're going to see more of in the future.
Yeah, these are really interesting like UX paradigms to think about. I this is the first time I'd considered inputs like from I guess this is like a kind of motion data, like with
Yeah.
the earbuds, but that's another way that we could be communicating with an AI agent, and that opens up, yeah, a huge world of like different types of input that are not just speech or text. And yeah, with multimodality, this also is
Yes.
another thing that's coming up. Cool, those are great answers. Yeah, so it's been great to hear kind of like hear where you're at with the current state of both your work and like thoughts about the industry and the space in general. We've talked a few times about autonomy, like this idea of an autonomous agent. Have you seen or have you yourself created a truly autonomous agent yet? And if not, what elements do you think we're missing to achieve something that you would consider truly autonomous?
Okay, so yeah, this again, I guess, kind of goes to definitions. Yeah, like
Mhm.
I've certainly created things, akin to the auto GPTs and things like that, right? Now, yes, in some ways that's an autonomous agent, although it's very, still limited to just running in a script kind of thing, right? It's not like it's going off and operating on the world or something like that. The challenge with those at the moment is that they just don't work at producing you the end output that's very good. And like I played around with a lot with those last year of trying out different things, and definitely that's where I realized that okay, that the fundamental issues around designing tools is often more important than the actual sort of agentic loop. So having the tools that an agent that can basically understand the output of an agent, translate that in some way to a specific action on the world, whether that's like an API call, whether that's like writing an email to someone, whether that's even making a phone call nowadays. All those things, those things are possible, but running it like just fully autonomous, they tend to go off the rails too much. So, this is where sort of designing, them to come in. Do I think we'll get to autonomous agents? I think yes, eventually, but it's probably still a while off. Right? I think we're just going to get better and better at designing good sort of railway tracks that instead of like the track just being from one city to another with a few sort of decision points on the way, it will be like going across from the west coast to the east coast of the states, where you've got like 50 different ways you could go to get there, and and all these other things could happen. They just become more complicated in that way, and it will appear that maybe they have autonomy, but that probably is not going to be really fully sort of autonomous sort of stuff. It is kind of interesting. Like OpenAI has made a big deal about like safety and stuff like that, and tried to claim that this model could, like, if we let it sort of call people up, it could do all these sorts of things. I think we're a while off that, right? Like, that with meaning that just by itself. Now, if someone programs it to do that, yes, it can totally do all that, right? But just having it, do anything like that. The fundamental problem with a lot of these things is defining the objective function that you're going for, right? So if you've got an autonomous agent, what is its objective function? Is it trying to, and with the sort of autonomous examples from last year, especially, people would give it these objective functions of like, okay, go and out on the web and do this, and write me a business plan to make $100 million company or something like that. And really, either one or two things would happen. It would just get in a loop where it would just go around and around and around and spend a lot of money in tokens back then. Or it would just basically get on the express train to be like, okay, I'm done. Right? The quality might suck, but I'm done, right? Like, think of like a teenager doing their homework or something, where all they care about is like they want to go out with their friends. They know they have to write 500 words. They're counting every word that they're writing or whatever. They're getting to that point. Once that point's done, they're like, okay, I've done your task, right? But as an end user, we're not good at sort of telling it like, I wanted a good report, and then we don't define what a good report is, or that kind of thing. So yeah, look, I've played around with the sort of autonomous stuff, like the sort of auto GPT stuff. There were a number of different things like that last year. I've played around with some of my own ones. I do find it kind of fun that nowadays, if you've got something like Llama 3 running in a llama, just to let it go and surf the web overnight, right, and see what it finds, right? To just like tell it that like, okay, your job is just to surf the web for the next 5 hours, find different cool sites, scrape them, save them into a rag, and then tell me about what was interesting about it and why you picked one side over another, or that kind of thing. And that I think that's kind of more for amusement than any practical kind of thing. But the fact that it can do that is kind of amazing, right? If you think about it, that it's not purely just a stochastic random dice roll of like, okay, do I click link A or B? It's like actually looking at the links and saying, oh yeah, I'm kind of interested in this. And like I've experimented with giving it its own sort of little knowledge graph of like who it is and what its interests are, and what kind of things it would be like to look for on the internet and stuff like that. And it can use those things to then make interesting decisions. So like I think there's a lot of interesting things like that, which that's not certainly not fully autonomous, but it's on the road to it, right? Or it's on on a path to doing that kind of thing. But it's more for amusement than for any sort of practical application.
Yeah, but that's fascinating though. I have not heard of someone doing that before, but it's really interesting to just, yeah, imagine giving it such an open-ended task and then coming back and seeing something that you're seeing is like completed. Like it's apparently, when you're looking at it, you're seeing, it's not just junk, it's not getting stuck on
It's
the site maps or the, terms of service or on different pages.
Yeah, it's interesting that like I wouldn't say it's hugely different than junk. You're right, it's not junk, but it's not hugely useful, right? It's like
Yeah.
although like I do kind of feel that like that could become more useful once you kind of know you want to do something with it, right? This is one of the
Hmm.
reasons why I like playing with these ideas and just seeing where they go. It's because that suddenly then you realize like okay, we have tools for basically getting things off Reddit. We also have tools for writing to Reddit, right? If you want to post on Reddit. So you could
Hmm.
imagine this thing, if you really wanted to build like a spam bot or something, it would work really well, right? I've resisted the urge to do that. Like, I kind of feel like there will be things like that out there. And I guess this is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing is pollution from these bots, right? From the agents just creating text pollution across the internet. That's something that's definitely a thing nowadays. I think that like you see that in all sorts of comments on social media, and I see it on YouTube. I see it like a bunch of places.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so
Yeah.
I have a few more questions about the future. We're hearing a lot of discussion about this idea of self-improvement. How far do you think we are from like a self-improving AI, and maybe what steps do you think lie ahead of us?
Okay, so in agents, we can definitely get the agents to do some self-improvement with techniques like reflection and reflexion and stuff like that, where they're basically, there's another nice paper that has this thing, RCI, recursive criticism improvement loops. And that's basically just feeding the output of the tool or output of the LLM back into the LLM and asking it to improve it. And actually, surprisingly, these models are actually very good often at critiquing things, even more so than actually generating things. So they can
Mhm.
often spot like where there's a flaw or something like that. The fundamental issue, though, is that doesn't improve the LLM. So really
Mhm.
what we want is recursive improvement of the LLM, so that over time it's getting better. Now, the big companies definitely, when they're looking at the chat data and stuff like that, they're able then to make profiles of like, oh, people are asking these kind of questions a lot. So then they can fine tune the models with that stuff and improve it that way. So you're seeing some improvement like that. But that's, really what we would like is some kind of transformer that just updates its weights throughout the day, right? As it's getting more stuff. That's still there are a number of different ideas that people are working on in research for that kind of thing. I'm reluctant to think that that's like a month away, 2 months away. I think you're still looking at something probably 6 months, a year off for that kind of thing to happen. That's certainly the idea of continual learning is one of the things that has to be solved for us to reach AGI, right? If you buy into any of the AGI sort of things, you have to have some kind of continual learning system and some kind of recursive improvement system, right? With these things going together. I do think, though, that for agents, there are lots of tricks that you can do that kind of replicate that. So, for example, one of the biggest things is as the models get bigger context windows, you can inject lots of in-context examples of what you want it to do. So you can do things like saving things where a user basically said, hey, thumbs up, this was an awesome result that the agent gave me. And that can now fold back in to be one of the in-context learning examples, so that the agent can then sort of learn more from that, doing it. Even though you're not improving the actual LLM, you're improving the agent with that. And there's a variety of ways that you can sort of come up with ideas of how to inject different examples for different tasks that the agent's doing and stuff like that. So I think, yeah, like we're kind of faking it at the moment, and it kind of works for certain things, but really what we want is like the actual LLMs to be able to update themselves and work out things themselves, even if it's not like just sort of learning facts. The facts we can look up, that's but getting better at reasoning stuff just from having sort of been given a few examples or shown a few examples, that then it can apply that reasoning to things. That's the sort of key thing. At the moment, a lot of it's left to chance, in that everyone's just making bigger and bigger models, and they're sort of thinking about the whole sort of emergent abilities thing, that at certain sizes these new abilities just kind of emerge. And no one really knows why that happens, right? There's no sort of explanation. Like, my guess is that some of it is that just after you see enough examples of something, you start to then sort of be able to, do it. And I think, for example, like math, the LMs are notoriously bad at math and stuff like that. And if you think about it, like if I asked you, okay, I've got 9,999 plus 1, you're just going to go, oh, that's 10,000. It's not a problem, right? But if you're thinking about it from like the agent, or where they're having to carry that one, multiple steps, and that kind of addition, how often do they see that, in training? Not, it's like 1 in 10,000 times that they see that, go from just adding 1 to a bunch of 9s, and suddenly we go back to a new 1 and then more zeros, kind of thing. So those things, I think a lot of it, just comes with being able to see, as the models get bigger, they get trained on more stuff. With synthetic data, they get training on better quality stuff, so that they can start to see these patterns. But really what we want is the models being able to do some kind of, self-improvement. And there are lots of rumors out there of different things that people are doing. We've yet to see anything that's sort of like really proven to be like, okay, this is something that works for updating models.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see how that problem is solved, but I definitely agree, based on my conversations, that we have to solve that. It's not optional. It'll definitely be a requirement.
It's
So
a
I have
very
two more questions. Go
very
ahead.
hard thing to do, though, right? It's like a
Yeah,
lot of
I
people
yeah,
are
I
working on it, a lot of smart people working on it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think the next big capability unlock for agents might be? And do you have any near-term prediction for the future of AI agents or AI more generally?
I definitely think we will see them just get more consistent, right? At
Mm,
being able to produce a result. Like, it's not, in some ways, that's not a sexy thing, like, oh, it's going to do this cool thing or something like that. They're just going to be able to do what they can do now, but much more consistently, much more accurately, over time. I think that's where things are headed. We will get, I do think where people are starting to realize now that sort of really the fundamental thing for agents is tools, right? Is
hmm
external tools to the LLM. And the better that you get at making tools, the better the quality the agents get. And so I think, we will see tools that are actually other models. So there are already some examples of this, where people are using, segmentation models, or, object detection models, which are sort of deep learning, vision models off on the side, just purely as a tool, that the agent can just sort of look at a picture and get a description of that. It can look at a picture and count the number of planes in that picture. It can, do a whole bunch of these kind of things. Those tools, it comes down to, okay, how fast do you need the answer back from the agent? So I think one of the things we're seeing too is that as we're moving away from the chat thing, we're now moving towards something where it doesn't have to be a real-time response. And people are sort of conditioned where, when it doesn't need to be a real-time response, that opens up a whole bunch of different things, because now we can do lots of different ways of checking, because token usage is getting cheaper and faster. We can do multiple calls to LLMs with variations on prompts, and then sort of work out like, oh, okay, come at it from different sort of perspectives, that kind of thing. So I think we will see things like that happen more. I think, at the sort of bleeding edge of models, yes, we will definitely see, new models with new capabilities. And I think it's up in the air as to what those capabilities will be. I think like even the people training the models, talking to some of the people that I've got friends at OpenAI, at Google, and I get the feeling that even they don't know, right, exactly what's going to come out, right? Like they know that if you scale these things up, they know that if you add more data, they know if you get better quality data, you get better quality models, but no one kind of knows that, oh, if we do this, suddenly we unlock all this new reasoning sort of stuff. So there's a really interesting competition going on at the moment called the ARC Challenge. I don't know if you've heard of this. This was a data set that came out, I think, 5 years ago, right? And it was for testing sort of intelligence and generalization, the ability to sort of, do a whole variety of different kind of tasks. And up until recently, I think the state-of-the-art score was around 30-40%, and I think it's just gone up to maybe 50%. But one of the interesting things is that one of the co-founders of Zapier put up $1 million prize for this thing of like, okay, who can get over 85%? And it makes totally sense, right? Because if people can build something that does reasoning better, like a startup like Zapier will benefit because they've got all the tools for connecting everything to everything else. So once someone's got that sort of better sort of reasoning system, that really opens things up. So that will be really interesting. And I saw an interview with him, and I think he sort of said, I watched it very quickly, so my memory might be off, but I think he kind of said, well, if people don't get it within X time, well, we'll just up the price, right? And I thought like, okay, in some ways that's kind of crazy, but kind of cool, right? Like that you're then you're giving an incentive for people who've got different ideas than the current research community to actually come in and try some of those ideas out. And if, going back to sort of like 2017, back in 2017, we went to this conference called NRIPS, right? We had a paper at this conference called NRIPS. It's like the sort of main AI conference. And one of the things, like DeepMind was there, they gave a bunch of presentations of, they had just done like the AlphaGo for chess and stuff like that. And so they were talking about that. Anyway, like the thing that I joked with my co-founder is that looking back on that, if you had just gotten up on stage there and said, no, guys, you're going about this AI thing all wrong, just predict the next word or just predict the next token, right? That's all you have to do. Scale it up, just predict the next token. Don't worry about all this other fancy stuff. Just do that, right? People would have laughed you off stage, right? And people would have thought you were crazy, to sort of propose that. Yet that's exactly where we're at now, right? These models are really big and really good at predicting the next token. And it turns out to predict the next token, they seem to learn representations of stuff that is useful to us. So, I think like we need some more crazy ideas like that, where someone just comes in and says, no, you're thinking about it wrong, try this, right? Or just simplify. And that's a real pattern in AI too, is that people tend to, come up with a really diverse set of sort of alterations of how to do something, and then it just comes to the next level when someone introduces something new and says, no, just simplify and just add more scale, add more data, add more compute. So the whole sort of Rich Sutton bitter lesson of sort of scaling up with more compute is fundamentally true, but we need that kind of next thing that's going to unlock a whole bunch of new things.
Yeah, that's great. So now we've come to the end of the conversation. So I want to ask something that I've been asking all of my guests, which is, do you have any recommended reading resources or learning pathways for people who are interested in working with AI agents? Maybe something from your channel?
Definitely on my channel, I've got a lot of videos about agents, right? And it's something that I've been really seeing a lot of videos about LangGraph, Crew AI, and I'm constantly adding to those things. Unfortunately, I don't get a chance to make as many videos as I would like, but I sort of make them and just sort of show people whenever I investigate something that's new or something like that, looking at that. reading wise, I think one of the challenges is things are just moving so quickly, right? That any sort of textbook or anything like that is basically out of date, and I've been sort of approached by publishers, right? Specifically asking me like, oh, would you be interested in writing a book about this? And it's like, yeah, but they tell me, oh yeah, the lead time is sort of like a year. Like, well, it's gonna be like out of date in forget a year, like in 2 months from now, it's gonna half it's gonna be out of date. So I think like Twitter is definitely one of the places. I try on the channel to try and cover most sort of new big announcements that sort of affect this kind of thing. Unfortunately, there's so many of them that obviously I can't cover them all. Yeah, I would say like for me mostly it's Twitter, and like I said, trying to build the agent that actually goes out and finds this info overnight, so that I've got some sort of cheat sheet notes the next day to sort of get a sense of, okay, what are people talking about, at least on social media or on different places.
Great. Well, I'll definitely get links to some of the videos on your channel and into the description box and the show notes for people who are watching.
Thank you.
Okay, so that'll be it for now. I want to thank you for your time. It's been a really fun conversation. I think people are going to get a lot out of this one. And before we go, I'll ask, where can people keep up with you?
Definitely on Twitter. My handle is my name on Twitter, and my name also on YouTube. Probably the two best places, for that.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll get links in the show notes and the description box for the YouTube video. All
Okay.
right. Well, thank you, Sam. This has been really fun.
Thank you for having me, Thomas. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah, it's good, enjoyable conversation.
All right, that is it for this episode of AI Frontiers. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I know I certainly did. To keep up with Sam, you can check out his website, linked in the description. Also got citations to some of the resources that he mentioned and ways that you can connect with him in the show notes of the podcast and the description box on YouTube. To learn more about Valory, our open source framework for co-owned AI, ways that you can build your own decentralized autonomous AI agents, you can check us out at valory.xyz. You can also follow us on X, where we are at ValoryAG. All right, until next time.